Welcome to episode 1 of UI Redesigns Live. So today we're going to be redesigning something called Beyond Books, which is a task management tool to help accountants save time and manage their workflows. The original screens are on the left here. And I'm not going to be focusing on any sort of like interaction design stuff. It'll be purely visual. So just kind of slowly scroll through these real quick, and we'll tackle them one at a time. And you can talk too, by the way. You can like ask some questions, discuss Q&A. Anyways, the two main things that I feel like UI always trips people up is understanding Gestalt principles, particularly the principle of similarity and proximity. So this is a really bad thing. But these are the two most important kind of principles out of Gestalt. And I'll explain them shortly. And then also having like a proper type scale. A lot of the times when people first deal with UI, don't really know what the standard type sizings are. So to make things easier, like I just recommend following like Google's material design type scale. Okay, so on to these two things. So similarity basically means that when humans process UI, right, like we need a lot of like small visual indicators and hints. These are called affordances that kind of like guide us in terms of how we process the UI. So one of the biggest things is like kind of understanding where attention should be drawn. And also when understanding how the UI works, you need to know like, how certain components and patterns are supposed to work within your UI. And the best way to do that is to build like consistency. So for example, like if all your buttons are purple, then they know when they see a purple button or purple like box, they can, click on it. And, if you have like different cards and they're all like, have the same border radius, the same like drop shadows and background, they will also know like, that it's a card and the interaction model for that card will be kind of applied to everything else that looks similar. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then proximity, this is actually like a key here. It's like spacing. Spacing is actually used as a tool to kind of show hierarchy and also degrees of relationships. What that means is every single element within your UI, they are related to one another by like a certain degree. And if things are closer together, you can perceive them to be part of one group. And if they're further away, you perceive them to be part of two groups. So quick example here is, let's say we have a button. Button here. And then we have the title, right? And we have, a description. So right now, these three things are equally spaced, right? So in terms of spacing, we kind of perceive all three of these to be like the same degree of relation. But in reality, the title and the description are a little bit more related than the description or the title is to the button. So what you usually want to do is kind of like follow a spacing system. The most common ones are usually multiples of 4 or 8. So if we take these two and make the spacing between them, let's say 8, that would be like 2 degrees of relation, for example. And then when this becomes one element, and you want the spacing between this element and the button to be more than 2 degrees. So we would probably do something like, I don't know, 24 or something, right?
Yeah.
And then that way you create kind of like degrees of relation with your components. And then I probably should have done this earlier, but like assume that the description and the title were like the same size. Because like they're styled exactly the same in like font size, font color, and hierarchy, we perceive them to be the same elements. So if we want one to look more like a title and one to look more like a description, you would want to change the hierarchy and make this bigger and bolder, for example, and make this maybe smaller with like a thinner font weight and maybe like slightly less dark. So then this becomes like a distinct element from this. And it's just obvious that this is a higher hierarchy than this. That's basically like a crash course of like the most common mistakes. I know it sounds like mumbo jumbo right now, but once you dive into the UI, you're going to see that like everything I'm doing is basically just a derivative of what I just said.
Okay.
Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, it does.
Cool. The next technique to kind of indicate here is using something called AutoLayout. I don't know if you know how to use AutoLayout, but it's actually something that will make your design go a lot faster and kind of guarantees like a pretty solid layout. So I can give you a really quick crash course on it if you're not familiar with it. Otherwise, I'll just kind of get started.
Yeah, you can go over it briefly because when I did this project, it was like my first time learning everything. So I definitely did not use auto layout at this point in time.
So I'm just going to be building this UI from scratch and kind of like making small fixes as we go along. So first thing, I'm going to start with like this menu bar. And with auto layout, you always want to build like the inner components first before you build up the outer components. So I'm going to start with like your logo. So I'm pulling in the logo mark, pulling in the fonts, right? And then I'm going to group these two together with auto layout. So I'm going to highlight both and then press Shift A, right? And what that does is it opens this panel on the right here, and you can set the spacing between elements, the padding around items, and also how the alignment works. So I'm going to align it horizontally. And then remember, I'm going to use like the base 8 spacing system. So everything I'm going to do is going to be a multiple of 8s. So this has 1 degree of relationships. I'm going to use 8 to create space between this and this. So if I measure, you can see that's 8. And then I'll just call this logo, right? So this is the first element here. And then next you have dashboard, tasks, drafts, and approver. So it's going to be an icon plus element. So I can actually use the same thing here and just like replace it. I'm going to copy this icon and then select the logo. And then you can press Option, Command, Shift, and X to just replace it.
Okay.
Which you can't do if it's a symbol, I think. So let me try that again. Detach. All right, so I'm going to replace this. Oh, that works. And then pull this dashboard. Right. And then now this is like one of these tabs, and that kind of creates a template. I'm going to hold Option and Shift to drag it, to duplicate, and then press Command D to repeat this a few times. And it's going to follow the same kind of template here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So before I actually duplicate this, I'm going to fix a quick visual hierarchy issue. Right now, the font size and the style of Beyond Books and Dashboard is identical. And according to the law of similarity, people are going to perceive them to be the same thing, but they're not. Like functionally, it's a different class of elements, even though you click on both of them. Like this will have different states and stuff. This is just going to always go back to home. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this like a very distinct wild font to make it seem like it's more of a logo. And then I'm just going to make this purple as well. Okay, so this is now your logo, and now it looks very visually different from this, right? And then I think size 16, I guess that's okay. I'm going to try size 14 first for this. And semi-bold is fine. This is your logo, cool. And then you see you have a version of this where you have like a highlighted state. So I'm just going to build that in and create both states real quick. So this right now, I'm going to give it a background. This is the stack for the logo. I'm going to add like a bit of padding around it. So padding is just like spacing within the element. Generally, anything that you build should have some sort of padding, just to be safe. For small elements, I use 8. For big elements, I use 16. And you can adjust the padding individually like this. So I'm just going to give 8, and automatically it adds 8 pixels around everything. Like so, right? And then I'm going to give it a corner radius. 8 looks good. And then sometimes if you want to save a bit more vertical space, you can make things wider on this side and shorter on the top and bottom. So you can do 8 on the side and 4 on the top and bottom if you'd like, but I like 8 for now. So we'll just go with this. I'm going to duplicate this and create a state for selected. And I'm going to just keep the same pattern that you have here. That's perfectly fine. I'm not setting up the design system because like there's not going to be enough time, and I'm just showing you like the actual like techniques here. Cool. So now we have this. I'm going to remove the background, and now we have both states, right? So
Mhm.
take this, drag it over, duplicate it 3 times, highlight this, make another stack, and then just set like a spacing increment between all of them.
Mhm.
Cool. Are you with me so far?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Is
I guess
it
like
is this too fast or too slow for you? It's
this
gonna
is
go a
good.
bit faster. Okay, cool.
Yeah, you can go faster. I had a quick question between like
Sure.
padding and margin.
Mhm, mhm.
I think I always get confused like which one to use. Like how would you
So, uh, m- so everything is based off something called the box model.
uh-huh. Oh yes, yes, yeah.
So if you look at this diagram here, this teal shape is like the element itself. Padding
Mhm.
is spacing within the element. So you usually use that to, add space around. So it'd be like inside the element.
Mhm.
And then border is optional, and then margin is outside of the element. So
Mhm.
technically, when I do spacing between these elements, that's technically margin.
Margin.
And
Okay.
and this kind of like purplish padding inside that's surrounding the element itself is padding.
Yeah.
And it's not like you use one or the other. You usually want to use both for nearly
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah. Okay, that makes
So
sense.
I'm just gonna keep going here
Yeah.
and just adding in these icons. What is approver?
So there's actually two states. Like you can be a preparer of all the work, and the approver would be
Mhm.
like your manager approving of all these tasks.
So is this actually like a tab menu item? Like, are you
Yes,
tapping
yeah,
this? Oh,
yeah. So
interesting.
so you would have like a few different roles.
Mhm.
An accountant can be like a preparer, approver. Those are just,
Gotcha.
I think, just two of the main
Okay,
ones.
that makes sense. All right, cool. I'm just gonna change the names here.
Okay.
Setting, drafts, task. Okay, cool. So I have this frame and this frame. I'm gonna group them together again. And
Mhm.
this time I'm gonna set something called space between. And basically what that means is it's going to, if I make this like bigger, or sorry, longer or wider, it's just gonna
Mm.
pin the two elements to the left and right side.
Mm.
I'm gonna give it a background just so you can see. And right now I'm gonna add some more margin. So I always start with 8.
Okay.
And you can see it instantly just like adds like a lot of breathing room. And then we
Yeah.
know that the entire width of this is 1440. So I'll do that. And then boom, you have your first nav bar.
Mm.
So I barely changed anything, but visually it looks a lot better. So why is that?
Mm.
So using the law of consistency, the spacing laws and the similarity laws, now your logo looks a lot more different than all these other elements.
Yeah.
And the spacing for this is a little bit better because if you zoom in here, the space between an icon and your label is less than the spacing between the entire tab bars. In fact, I probably want to make it a bit wider to make it more obvious. Whereas this is almost like equal. So it kind of creates a
Yeah.
bit of like visual tension. I don't really know what I'm looking at. The
Mm.
icons and the text kind of like float together evenly across the row, and there's no kind of I don't know, grouping afforded. So it's a bit harder for me to like process like what is a element that's like, part of a
Yeah.
group and what an element, and if they're like two separate elements.
Mm.
So my voice is like not very good today, but hopefully that makes sense.
No, that makes
So
sense.
all right, I'll pull this in now.
Okay.
And then yeah, you can add a border. I think that's fine. I'll probably just keep it here. One thing that you probably want to do is, like with any desktop file, you want it to be responsive. So usually to indicate that, like you need like columns and stuff, which I won't get into now, but
Mm.
everything is usually bound within a container. You have a lot of margin on the left and right side.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a unique UI because like this seems like it'd be really responsive and you just like add more columns for using a super wide screen. But generally you do want to set like a max container width. And a long time ago, it used to be like 960, which is about this wide. But some people go up to like 1280 now. So I'll probably just use that.
Okay.
So 1280, this means there's like 80 margin on each side. So it's gonna align the nav bar with the container. I'm just going to add a margin of 80 on the left and right side. So if I draw this guide, you can see that it aligns with my container width. All right, are you with me so far?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then I'm just going to add a divider now. So 1440, height of 1. Again, I'm going to create another auto layout here and just align it like so. And in terms of the color of it, I'll just sample that. Cool. Next thing to build is going to be all these drop downs. So I'm going to probably use something very similar here. I'm going to copy this over. And you can use arrow keys to kind of change the order. So I'm going to make the text go forward. I'm going to give this a border. And I'll just copy what you wrote here, month end, June 2021. And then right now you have some issues here with your icons. So with your icons, all icons should be bounded within the 24 by 24 box. There are some scenarios where you might have a scale of different icon sizes ranging from like 12 to 32. But let's just do 24 by 24 for now. There's certain icons where it's like you need to scale down like a lot smaller, but it should still be bound within the 24 by 24 box. Common examples are these two right here. You might see that it looks a little bit awkward. I think it's because the icons are way too big. Okay. So if we use a plugin like Nicodify, I just have a drop down. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. Of course. Well, they didn't do this properly either, so I'm just going to do this manually. So I go 24, and then I think it usually scales down to be around 12 heights, or even less. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. It's still like bounded within a 24 by 24 box. Okay. So I'm just going to copy and replace this icon here. And I'm going to set it to space between. So if this stretches, it doesn't break. What else do we do? So I don't want to use the exact same type style as the navigation because it's the same hierarchy, and we always want to style elements differently if they're not the same element. So I'm going to drop this down and make it regular. And the color, I'm not going to make it pure black. You shouldn't use opacities normally, but for the sake of speed, I'm just going to press 8 and slightly decrease the darkness of the block. Okay. And then the stroke outside, I'm going to decrease even more. That looks a little better. Cool. I'm going to pull this and drop down. And then click this over, add filter. Click content, do 16 spacing. Click content, 16 spacing. And then I'm just going to swap this with the filter icon. Usually I'm not a fan of the funnel, but it's not for a good reason. I usually use this icon. Okay. So replace this. And then we're going to add like your little tube tag here. So I'm going to use AutoLayout as well, Shift A, and then I'm going to set fixed width, make this 20, center, speed, circle up, and then I don't know if it should be like gray. I feel like we should give it a color. Like okay. 2, yeah, like purple maybe. Okay. And then font size 10, bold it up. And then this is a little trick I like to do. If you turn this into a frame and unclick clip content, as long as it's auto layout, as long as it's not auto layout, you can do something like this. So move the frame in, and I'll paste this on top, and then move it into, whoops, and move it into the corner here, and take the parent frame and click clip content, and you can see it overlays on top. Oh, okay. So this is a little trickier, but it's a lot better to do because if I click on this element, you can see the height is still 40. It kind of hides this extra height. So when I group this together and I want to align it, like it won't like mess anything up. But if I didn't do that trick, you can see let's say if I didn't do that, and I did, trying to show you like the negative example right now.
You're like, how do I undo this?
How did I do this the wrong way? Let me see. Okay, so I move this in, and then I, make it that, and you can see like it kind of pushes things away because it makes the height a lot taller and it doesn't line up anymore. So that's why like it's important to do this.
Okay, that's cool.
And then I'm just gonna do this again. Let's duplicate this, move it over, call this smart, and you reverse the icons here. Filters are okay if you put it in the front, but all drop downs and oh yeah, that's actually a good question. You are using two different drop down icons.
Yeah, and just I guess for sort, I wanted to represent how you can like scroll up and down. But yeah,
Well,
I think I
that's a
should
right
keep it
icon for sort, because like sort is meant to be, this is what sort
something like
is.
that.
That's the
Okay.
right icon. So
Yeah.
sort and filter, you can put the icon in the front or the back. But I just do something like this, and then I'm going to decrease the spacing between these elements.
Yeah.
16, that looks pretty good. That's your toolbar now. And then I'm going to copy this, move this over, call this search for a task. And the big mistake you made here is that you did not decrease the opacity of this and make it more like a placeholder text. So I'm just going to press 5 and then do something like that. And then replace this with search. We might end up only doing one screen today. I'm sorry, I maybe overestimated how fast I can explain this. But I feel like whatever I teach you on this screen, I feel like you would be able to easily apply to all the other screens. So let me know how that goes.
Okay.
Right. Do the same thing here, create task. I want this to be the same height, so I'm just going to do this manually. So fix height to 40, center align, cool. And it's a button now. Grab this color, give it a stroke, fill this in. And then obviously, again, you don't want to use the same text style. Let's make this bold. You can even like all caps it or something. Or not. That looks pretty good to me. And then I'm just gonna give the side a little bit more padding. That looks good. Group these together. Remember, undo your relationship, and then put these two frames together. Right? Give it some padding again. Adding web background so you can see. I'm gonna use 8. And then because we have the container on the left and right side, I'm gonna make the left and right margins 80. And amazingly, all I need to do now is take this element. So it has a navigation, the divider, and now I'm just gonna copy and paste what I just built into it. Command Shift V. And then, oh, whoops, what happened? Oh, sorry, let me do fixed width. Cool. This is fill container. And then fill container. But just gonna, oh, what happened? Did I calculate something wrong, maybe? Oh, it's because I didn't set it to space between, that's why. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna fix the width of this back to 1440. And then if I did that properly, okay, cool, there we go. That's what I expected to happen. Okay, so that's good. You've added this. I'm gonna give it some more vertical height actually, so there's a bit more breathing room. And then I'm just gonna duplicate the divider again. Move it down, cool. So divider line is a little bit too faint, so make it a bit darker. That looks good. Okay, so let's see what we have so far. Removing this. So this is what we have on the left side, this is what we have on the right side. Do you notice a difference in the UI?
Yeah, like the differences are.
It's subtle, but like for some reason,
subtle,
like it just feels better, right?
Yeah, it feels lighter.
Yeah, we're following the proper laws. So I'm copying your elements was identical. So now I'm gonna build these one column at a time. So very easy to do. And then I'm using AutoLayout for everything. So you know what, I lied. I'm gonna do the columns for you because we need to do it for this one. So open a layout grid, set this to column, set to center. width, let's just do 64, header 16, 12, 16 columns. Okay, that looks good. And I'm going to realign everything to fit this new thing here. So the new width of the container is 1264, 88 on each side. Well, so I'm just going to fix that. Oops. This is basically like Excel, so I feel like you probably like will activate some of your like past accounting, you know,
I'm
like
getting
talent.
triggered.
Okay, I didn't mean to
Kidding.
but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Well, all right, so we have 4 columns here. Let me just like size this. So 4. Okay, cool. So that works out perfectly. Yes, it does. All right, so let me just do the measurement here. Okay, so that's 304. So we'll do this. Set this to fixed width, 304. Center align it. This is your title. I'm going to steal this component here for this. I'm going to remove the stroke, move this over, decrease the spacing, get rid of the outer padding, and then just call this high priority. And I'm going to change like the type style here so it's visually distinct. Let's try maybe something like this. That looks good. All right. Cool. So I'm gonna just like stack these two on top of each other and kind of build the foundation now. Pro tip: you can press Command Y to kind of view like a, I don't know, like a wired outline of everything.
Okay.
Yeah. So like the best way to ensure you know, you're building UI right is like the lines should all line up as much as possible. So you can see like this is lined up perfectly. Like this doesn't match like the grid, but it doesn't have to. It's just for the big elements. And you can see for this, like this is pretty good. You've actually done a really good job outlining everything up. But yeah, I think it's just the spacing, the padding, the scaling, or UI that's like making you look off. Anyways, continue. So we got this. And then I'm going to rebuild this component here. And again, I'm going to go inside to outside. So prepare financial package. 5, add an icon for checks. Ideally, if you're doing this properly, you would use the same icon pack so it's consistent. It's very important to like, use the same style. I'm just doing this to show you how to do it. So yeah. So group these two together. Basically, anytime I'm creating like a grouping relationship, I'm going to use AutoLayout. And then I'm going to define that degree relation using the space routine function. Cool. And then here we have due date. Generally in UI, you don't need to use colons, by the way, because you can just use like different text styles to denote that they're different. When you have 2 text elements like this aligned with each other, take the longer one, see what the width is, and then just make sure they're both consistent in width. And you can do that by doing this. I'm just gonna make both like 72. And then June 2, don't use exclamation marks in UI if you can avoid it.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Unless you're using copy. And you know, we can add some delay here too. Let's throw in the US flag. So you can do, I had so much fun with this, I'm sorry.
No, this is good. These are the things I wouldn't
this
have
is like the
noticed.
stuff like I would do, but is potentially overkill right now. Like emojis. Just do United States. The inserts. That's good. And then you know, do soon, don't do in brackets, create an actual like type for it.
Okay.
Let's make this as 12. And then I need to save some vertical height. So I'm gonna make the top and the bottom 4, give it a pointer radius. And you know, maybe give it like a nice background color, orange maybe, reduce it.
Yep, yeah, that sounds good.
Does it have enough contrast? Do and then we put these two together. Let's see, how can we do this? So this and this group, I'm going to set the spacing to be 16, 2 degrees relation, this and this group, 16, and then these two will be grouped together. I'll do, this is actually a pretty interesting problem that we just encountered, hang on. Because the spacing between this and this and this and this should be very, very different. Like these rows should be further apart than these two are the same. So you might want to consider something like this. So it's like a little bit more obvious that this is one group and this is one group. But let me just play around with this and see. So let's decrease the font size here. That's fine. Medium. That's fine. This, maybe I'll copy this down here and make this a little bit smaller. All right, let me just see what this looks like in the UI. So I'm gonna group this. These two are the same group, and then these two are the same group. And then go to fill. And anytime you turn something into a card, just like add some like inner padding.
Yeah.
So that's what the element looks like so far. Let's fix it. So I don't like the teeth here. So I'm gonna see if we can make this work. So how like this. Maybe I'll just decrease the space and make this. Okay, and then you have like the person's avatar. Two. So I'll move this and make this a group. And this time I will bottom align it. Cool. All right, so we have that now. We know the outside container is like 304, so we have to like create like another auto layout stack and add the background here. And we know that this is supposed to be 304. So I'm gonna change the outside to 304, and then everything on the inside I'm gonna set to fill. And that will basically just like respect the padding and stuff that you built in.
Yeah.
This is a little tedious. Please let me know if you find an easier way to do this. I sometimes don't plan ahead. No. So everything should be filled out over group list. I'll maybe fix this later because I'm not spending too much time on this.
Okay. Yeah, I remember creating these task cards with like proximity. It was just so difficult because I didn't want to make the due dates and tags too small. So yeah, I think it's just like I'm gonna play around with this a bit more.
Like that for now. I might come back to this at next time. But
Okay.
Cool. And then I'm gonna group these two together. 8 degrees, and then this I'll do 24. And then you can just like copy that again, make this low priority. And then the other do this. And then if I copy that, cool, that worked as expected. Nice. All right, so this is one column.
Okay.
And all we need to do is actually yeah, you would duplicate this across 4 times. Oops. 4 times, based off whatever I set the margin to be, which is 16. Okay, and then I'm literally just copy and pasting this back in here, and then I'm gonna add 88 margins each side. So center lines, bump that down, cool. But you basically have your UI, but there's some stuff that we can tweak. Let's make this header better. So visually, this is identical to the bottom, which I don't know if that's a good idea or not. This visually looks a little bit different. Let me see.
Yeah.
This is okay. Let me just add some more winners and everything. So it's just that. Okay, so what issues do we have here? Right now, in terms of spacing, the spacing between this is the same as this, and it's kind of creating like some ambiguity in terms of like how these things are related. So one way to do it is you can decrease the spacing here, and then that actually fixed it, I think. Or you can do something like adding like another background card around it, but you already have one layer here, so it's probably not worth it. I'm gonna temporarily delete these, and I'm just gonna add a drop shadow to these cards. So it's a little bit for drop shadows, you want them to be very, very diffuse. What that means is you want to go a bit bigger on the Y and blur value. So I'll do something like 1648. So that's a lot, but you want to decrease the opacity as much as you can. Like I usually go between 5 and 10%. Something very subtle is enough.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do 10%. And avoid, you should ideally avoid sheer block. Usually go like slightly off block. You can always tint it with like your color too, if you a little bit if you want to. Okay, we'll do that, and then we'll set it to be 10%, 25. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then we'll take this and then just duplicate it 4 times. Change the top. You should probably actually color code these, I feel. These like top bars, that would be smarter, right? So review complete would be some sort of green, I think, right? For review would be orange.
Yeah, we can go with that.
In progress would be, let's go with yellow. And then to do blue.
Yeah.
Oh, so much better. And let's add some more similarity here. So I'm going to take this color. Or take what this color should be, sorry. And swap this. Oh, beauty.
Oh, I see. It looks nicer.
But you know, I'm only applying like the same like 4 or 5 principles I told you at the beginning.
But it's like these small things that make a big difference.
You can see like UI is actually very, very easy to do once you kind of get a hang of the rules and you just kind of like learn how to apply them for different circumstances.
Yeah,
So,
I think this auto layout is so good. So just need to practice being fast at it.
Yeah. This looks pretty good to me.
Yeah. This definitely makes it more like alive. Like the old version, I guess it was okay, but there's just something off or something missing, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was.
Do you want to go through like the remaining states here?
Sure. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I guess it's no time to do this. I used to do it a lot faster, or maybe I'm just like having an off day today. Oh, if you're kind of like changing this stuff, make sure you set the height to be fixed so it doesn't
Okay.
auto like remove whatever you had.
Yeah. Okay.
It's up to you if you want to like kind of keep the row consistent, or if you're okay with any shrinking. It's up to you if you want to make priority like aligned. What do you think?
Yeah. Originally, I wanted it to be aligned because, um, like my initial idea was just to have one one row that says high priority and another that says low priority, so that you can filter or hide everything that is in one state or another.
There's two ways you can actually approach this. Let me fix this real quick. I feel like as soon as I do high design, my OCD kicks into high gear, and then I'm just like, what am I
Oh
doing?
no.
Okay, actually that's good. Okay, there's two ways you can handle this. You can keep this the way it is, and then set everything to like HUD contents. So you'll have like different lengths, maybe like so. Or what you could do is all of these, you can delete all these and just keep it on one side.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even know if this will work. Let me see if this will work first. This, and then if you keep these, remove these, I would probably have to do a pretty, okay. I was thinking like a collapse all and expand all button on the right side. So maybe you'd want to do something like, collapse all. Add our 88 margin on each side, change the space between, and then delete these. Delete that. Like kind of regroup this last time. I can remove this unfortunately. This becomes a row at this spot. Oops. Well, that is what I expected. And then I'll grab these. You. Here. Then duplicate this to the bottom, call this high priority. And then you can potentially keep the same like heights if you want.
Yeah.
But I think the first I think the first one is going to be better. If you look at Trello, which is like I guess like the king of this format, that's what they did.
I'm trying to
That's
think.
what's doing that.
Yeah, no, I like both. I need to think about like in which case accountants would use more. Um, like the first one is more customized. It's more tailored to each column, whereas the other one is kind of like you can look at it as a whole.
Yeah, I'd say keep noodling on this. I kind of give you a foundation, but I recommend that you kind of go through all your existing UI and apply the same techniques and principles I did, you can send me your kind of final solution afterwards, and I can give you some more tips and grit before you submit it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And don't forget, you can use a frame trick to handle cases like this if you want to keep this style. Although I feel like it's probably like a more visually lightweight. You can include like or mark an element as blocked.
Yeah, blocked. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So that was the session. What did you think? What were your main takeaways?
This was really good. Just like these few principles was able to transform it into something that looks a lot better, and it looks a lot cleaner than what I had before. So yeah, no, I think this was really helpful. I'm gonna rewatch this so that I can fix up the other ones.
So just review, this is the before, this is the after. I kept your UI bases the same aside from any big glaring issues. Main things I did were like elements that were different. I gave them very, very visually distinct styling. And I just fixed the spacing based off the salt. And I applied AutoLayout to everything and used like different margins and paddings and space between elements to just create like better grouping hierarchy. Cool. All right, I am excited to see what you come up with.
Awesome. Oh, I had a quick question, actually.
Sure.
You mentioned something about not using opacity or trying, like, what's the rationale behind that?
I think you should talk to whatever developer you're working with, because some tech stacks and some developers have preferences where they don't like using opacity. I personally like using opacity, but like I know like in terms of like when they're coding it, like it's a little bit trickier to handle, and it does create some weird scenarios where your text might not show up properly. So I usually generate my color palettes using opacity, but then I convert it into like a flat hex value afterwards.
Okay, yeah, that's useful.
Yeah. The one exception though is like if you're building a pure dark mode UI and you have like colored backgrounds, then you should use opacity, because opacity will kind of guarantee like the same amount of contrast between foreground and background. But it's definitely like something you'll have to play around with and kind of see what your personal preferences are. I don't know if there's like like a gold standard, but I know most designers recommend not using opacity if you can.
Okay.
There also isn't so I'm giving you such a long answer for some reason. There's also a scenario where if you're building a lot of different states for a component, you can use different opacities across the board to communicate different states. So for example, states, material, design. Let me see if they still have this. You can see the way they do it, they have the container, the state layer, and the content layer. The state layer basically just becomes like a percentage opacity of black and white that's consistent for everything. So all hover states is like an 8% opacity on top of the existing component. And all hover states is like 60% white on top of the component. And if you want to create that standard, it's something that I think is a lot better. But you have to kind of talk with your engine, make sure they know how to interpret your specs.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No.
Yeah. This is exactly what I was talking about. I'll paste this in here as well.
Okay.
Yeah. If you ever want like another crash course on like really advanced like component stuff and actually creating design systems the proper way, like not like I did today, I can also show you how to do that as well.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds good.
All right. See ya.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.